Evening all, welcome to Space Engineers. Check out this, look at that. Displays telling me things, lovely data, num 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 num, lovely, lovely. This is, it's not even a mod, well, is it a mod? It's a script that runs within your computer processor that you build, and the timer block just refreshes it every second, and you get information like this. Now, what that's telling me is damage. It's telling me cargo content. It's telling me a whole raft of things. So we'll probably show you a bit more about that. In fact, let me show you a bit right now. Now, what's happened here is I flew back to the ship because we have actually got, at this point, enough ice to attempt a takeoff. Now, I'll tell you now, we don't take off in this video. We're going to take off in the next one. And I know because I just edited it. And it's pretty funny because there are a few failed attempts. So, stay tuned for the next video. But don't stop watching this one because this is actually the beginnings of how we've done that. So there's a fair bit of repair and so on. But let me show you that the script. Now, you have to go to a particular script site to subscribe. I'll probably include the link in the comments, so just make sure you do that. So you come to your programmable block and you subscribe to the script, and you see there it's configurable display LEDs. And all you do then is you run the code, you compile it, then you run it, and then effectively that's now running on this ship. And I've done this for my dropship, I've done this for my base, and I've also now done this for the big ship. Then all you do is you set the timer block to run, or rather the programmable block to run, and then you set up the timer block to refresh every second. And that's it. That's all it does. So you see here, we just set it to 1 second and click start. And that code is now running every second. Blink, blink, it's running. And this is where you start to do really the cool stuff with it. So you now put your LCD screens up, your plasmas, as we used to say. Obviously get them the right way around because it doesn't work if you don't. But effectively, it's just as simple as this. You go into the display, you type square bracket LCD close bracket, and then basically you can say show me something. So in this case we put damage, and it runs the thing to say, well, these are all the damage systems on the ship, and you can see it's pretty jacked up. In fact, the ship's pretty broken, in fact. And then you can change the color and the size and all this. You can do a huge amount with it. This is wonderful, and I do stress you don't need a mod to do this. All you need to do is subscribe to the code, and then effectively you can run this yourself, and you see there every second it's just updating. That's showing damage, so as you can see there's a lot broken on this ship, and as you start to go around and repair it, they start to tick off, they disappear, and then the list gets smaller and smaller. It's nice. I highly recommend you do this. Now, what other areas that you would get benefit from this would be how filled are your tanks, how filled are your refineries, how much energy are we producing versus using, what's my remaining fuel time left, and so on. As you can see here, look, show me how much of the resources we have in our inventory, show me all of the inventory. And you can see here it'll tell us then, how many in terms of percentage complete we have in terms of resources and so on. So there's a whole post on it. You can do huge amounts with it, but I just wanted to show you this because this has been one of those nice finds that has completely opened up the game for me like you wouldn't believe. And I think for just a little bit of effort, and once you've learnt the commands, it's amazing what you can do with it. So for example, you could say how many of my batteries are empty. Later on, you'll see as we start to repair, you'll actually see that I put these to show how filled are my hydrogen tanks. So, pretty sweet, isn't it? It's pretty nice. I'm liking it. Anyway, so now begins the final prep for taking off again. Now, unfortunately, again, I have done a fair bit of work on this offline, only because, and we've sped this up slightly, so you'll probably notice this is just a little bit faster than normal. It's because there's a huge amount of repairing now to be done. And to be honest, all of it has been done against incredibly tight resource constraints. So I've actually taken apart this ship and put it back together a few times now because it's just been, I've just had to, unfortunately, because getting the thing so that it actually gets off the ground has taken a fair bit of effort. So all I did was that, I just Netflixed and chilled, but I didn't do the chill bit. I just basically did the Netflix and basically watched stuff like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Did you ever watch that as a kid? I loved that program as a kid. Absolutely brilliant. If anything, that made Will Smith's career because let's face it, he was the friend that everybody wanted in that program. But anyway, so as you can see, we've done a huge amount of work to get this part of the ship back upon its feet. Now, What I've done is, in fact, I'm just realizing this is the beginnings of that footage, is this whole rear area has been drilled out. Drilled out. That's a technical term. And what effectively we've done is we've replaced it with, I think, 9 hydrogen engines. Now, I was quite surprised to find that hydrogen engines don't take a lot of resources to build. I thought they'd have taken, like, as if you think large thruster engines, they need all of those thruster components, right? Well, that's not the case for this. And in fact, this is it. You can still see I'm starting to insert the hydrogen tanks now anyway. We did multiple tanks, but we had one tank pretty much exposed here. And this is obviously what we're installing now. So we can actually see how full we were. This linked to, in fact, funny point. I tried to, one of my kind of master plans, and you'll laugh at this one, was, well, actually, am I not wasting my time trying to take off from the planet? Surely I can just jump drive from the planet. I mean, come on, Battlestar Galactica did it. So I actually did even spend time building a jump drive. Now, I did have components for it actually in one of the cans. It's funny because I built it way back, and I actually had all the stuff stored for it. So that was quite good, but I can tell you the air was blue when I found out you can't actually use a jump drive in a gravitational well. So I was very annoyed, let's say. But, you know, I knew there was going to be no easy way to do this. So, you know, there's not a lot you can do. But anyway, so that's component number 1 pretty much in place. And what followed on now is really just a massive grinding and refining exercise, you know. Took apart most of the ship, in fact. So this back bit has been completely hollowed out, more or less. And you'll see this, don't worry. But at the moment, this was just the beginnings of it. And to be honest, I just was scrapping any component that had, you know, rare parts in it I was taking. Because I didn't want to go and mine. Mining would have been a bit of a problem. I had all my mining gear at the ice station as well, so it would have been a bit of a pain to do that. But thankfully, I did have, you know, small cargo containers just filled with components throughout the ship. So I'm really glad that I did that. So there we go. Anyway, so the vast majority of what it became now was trying to make sure that, you know, we've got enough parts for those hydrogen engines, and basically we can build everything that we need. So, you know, this is a wonder of the game. It really is. I do I do have such fun playing this game. I don't think there's anything like it, in fact. You know, I think in terms of 3D good, in fact, probably the one game that I'd say is near it is Forgecraft Evolved. If you've never played that, that is worth playing. Only because there's some really nice concepts in it, but it's not the same. This, yeah, Space Engineers still has that real, I think, privilege of just, it's such an odd game to play. And there's nothing really like it, so I think this is why it works so well. So definitely worth it. But as you see, really now, we need to start channeling the engines. Now, I like the fact that hydrogen needs that kind of direct fuel link to the hydrogen tank. I did think that was very nice. And thankfully, because we made a bit of a channel when this thing landed onto the planet, when we detonated onto the floor, we dug a channel. So actually this made it even easier to build these engines beneath. And as you can see, half the ships disappeared anyway. So this became quite an easy thing to do over time. And as you'll see, as we go through, that the vast majority of what we needed to do was actually just cutting out parts we didn't need. Just a quick point, thank God I made these internal deck plates as well, because they actually come with construction components, and because there's thousands of them in the ship, thank God, because it made life a lot easier when it came to building these last few things. So definitely loving that. I think just absolutely blown away by how much work this was. I mean, it was a huge amount of work. And there you go. So that's our first engine ready to go in place. And I'm surprised. Maybe I've missed something, but I thought that they'd be equivalent to the thrusters, but they're not. They're actually quite generous. Okay, you need lots of fuel, but I've got to admit, if it had been like the thrusters, we wouldn't have been getting off this planet at all, because just to do that, oh wow, there we go, just literally just that's an accident waiting to happen, and it did. But I think definitely this is one of those, look at that, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, the whole thing was just carved out. But it's good because it means that there's now basically lots of resources to start claiming. And to be honest, building the hydrogen engines was easier than I thought. And I just literally over the period of about an evening, I probably had all the frame in place, and then it just became fixing it. Now, I did have a problem. Somewhere from the front all the way to the back is a conveyor system, which unfortunately used to run on the bottom part of the ship, and that's been crushed. So I've tried numerous times to repair it, and as far as I can tell, there's no reason it isn't working other than the fact that it doesn't work. So in the end, and you'll see this in the next video, just before we launch, I actually have to move the oxygen generators to the back of the ship, because sometimes they were putting oxygen or hydrogen rather across. Most of the time they weren't, and it's becoming a bit annoying after a while. So quite annoying in fact. So really I think the vast majority of the work now was just grinding out these things, putting in more engines, and basically just going for it. And it's fascinating because, and this probably is a bit of a sneak peek for next week or next time's video, that I should have probably thought to put forward and backward and sideways motion on these engines, but it just didn't occur to me. So yeah, watch out for that in the next video, because that gives me a lot of fun. But as you can see, just cutting out all of this conveyor system. Unfortunately, it meant it did have to be replaced, so it meant I'd have to go into the superstructure on the top and actually fix that. So I wasn't particularly looking forward to that. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot you can do. Unfortunately, you have to kind of get this thing working, right, because you can either do it half-assed or you can do it right. And most of the time, I would half-ass it. But when it came to engines, I can't really get off the ground and fly unless I've got proper working engines. So this became a real part of the process. So hopefully you'll see that. But one of the key things that we're not doing, and I should talk about this, is we're not doing the vehicle wheels yet. We are going to do them, but we just can't do it yet. And the reason is I actually tried to put wheels on it, but because the ship is so big, it's rocked on one side. So therefore I couldn't rock the ship on the other side and get them off, or get them on rather. So unfortunately I did try to do the mega base, and it is still absolutely my design intention to do that. But right now we need to take off. We need to get this ship in the air and flying before we can actually do the wheels. And once we've done the wheels, it'll then work, because you can then just drive them. But all in good time, as a wise man once said. We will get to that. First off, though, is to cut holes in the bottom of the ship and put engines in them. And so far, this has been quite easy. I must admit, I actually am quite liking hydrogen. I think if you can have the supply, then surely it's the better way to have thrusters, but because it's just that little bit easier to do. So post in the comments, do you have hydrogen engines generally now, or can you still use thrusters? I have no idea. I would have thought that hydrogen engines would be your main thrust, and your thrusters would be just thrusters, as it says. So you would use the thrusters just to maneuver and so on, and keep stable, and that probably feels like what it's supposed to be. So let me know if I've got that right. But I'm excited. I think this is going to be something. It's pretty interesting when you see how we do take off. I won't spoil it, but it does become pretty interesting. But anyway, there we go. Join us next time as we prep for launch.